So how many people are familiar with native seed search and heard of it? Now, thank you. Welcome home. So much easier to do this. I was in Santa Barbara, and you get a few hands. But incredibly lucky, I think we all are, to live in a region of the world where the vision and the organization and the hard work came together to save the collection of crop plant seeds that we have at Native Seed Search. I really think that that's a true treasure that will help all of us as we sort of re-embark on this adventure to reclaim our food system. Because as so many, I think the theme that keeps coming to me and it echoed through yesterday, and I see so many mirrors in what Woody's talking about with the financial system, is that, first of all, it's a lot worse off than we thought when you start looking at the data. I mean, why are we arguing over agriculture and how we're doing it? If you looked at those numbers this morning, there's no argument. It's losing money. Somebody asked, Wallace Stegner, the great writer in California, once asked a cattle rancher how, about his operation, and he said, well, I'm only losing about $1.10 a head now on my operation. And he said, well, how do you make a living doing that? And he said, volume. And that's really, it's a momentum and a volume thing. So it's really, in some ways, it's worse. So I'm going to keep my remarks focused on seeds for just a second. Center for Biodiversity says we've lost maybe 96% of the crops, seeds that were available in 1903 to today. 96% of the diversity that was available on this continent for you to get, to grow crops, is not available. Okay? So we've got the 4% left. If you look at the regions of the United States and regions of the world, actually, Native Seed Search and the people in the Southwest have really done a better job at keeping those things, saving them, and are now making them available again. And so I see my role as director at Native Seed Search at a crux point in its history. It took Gary and Barney and Mahina and others' vision to begin to save some of this stuff so it wouldn't disappear the way the 96% did. And then it took a lot of hard work to grow out most of that collection. We've grown out 96% of it now and looked at it. The stuff, the surplus seeds that we've harvested from that grow out at our farm in Patagonia, we make available. Our catalog has about 400 varieties of things that you won't find anywhere else in the world, representing a diversity that's just unbelievable to be able to tap into. And so, done a great job with that, and we're going to finish growing out the collection in the next 2 years. We just got a grant to do that. So now what? Now we're awaking to a new wave, a new sustainable agriculture, and Native Seed Search will be responsible for helping however we can with the seed portion of this. Because it's not going to be sustainable, folks, without access to our own seeds. Right now, if you looked at those charts this morning about how we're buying everything from the outside, that's including our seeds. It's probably 99% of them. In some farm operation, modern farm operations, I was reading the other day, the inputs are up to 20% of their costs now are the seeds. So this offers huge economic incentive for us to get control over that. And so we want to use the farm at Native Seed Search. We are you. We're a nonprofit. We're 1,800 members. We want you all to help us and become members. But we want to use the resources at the farm and at our new conservation center and all the 2,000 varieties that we've gathered that go back thousands of years here, plants that are adapted to this climate. And we want to somehow make that available to help grow this new regional agriculture, okay? So I'm open to ideas. How can we do that? If you want to get involved in this, it's an incredible opportunity. And this is where the real crime, I think, has been committed in the 20th century. Losing 96% of your diversity, just not paying attention while it disappeared is a huge, I think that's what our children's children will look back at this era and say, what were you thinking? Right? This beautiful human agriculture over 10,000 years. In 1900 in the United States, there were 2,000 varieties of corn being grown. Every corner of the country had its own corn. All right? And people were saving all of those seeds. It was a public resource. Everybody owned it. Now we're maybe over 90% of the corn seed now is genetically modified. It's 3 or 4 varieties, and it's owned by 2 or 3 companies. And what were we thinking, right? Well, now we are thinking. And so part of the process of getting this back is for all of us to get back involved in that. And fortunately, I think it offers huge opportunity. Because as we teach in our seed school, is that there's probably nothing you can hold in your hand, nothing you will pick up that has more embedded potential energy than a seed. And so think about it for a minute. When I go to first grade classes, you know, I hold one up, and what gets their attention is when you point out that inside each seed is 1 million more seeds. Millions more. Unlimited. It's a self-replicating system, right? It also has a hardware and software built in so that on each iteration through its life, it can change its own genetic structure and adapt to its immediate environment. We don't have any other technology, nothing you can pick up that is quite that magic. And the potential in it for each and every one of us as farmers is exponential. That's how we build wealth in farming. That's the base of it. And so as a product, as a farmer, this is what I want to say. The real crime is that we forgot that part of it. Somehow we're buying all of our seeds. We think that we don't have time. You know, it's too complicated or whatever. It is farming. It's part and parcel of it. It always has been. Gary's traveled. I've been in countries, you've maybe traveled to countries, where everybody that farmed and gardened saved their own seeds. Because it does something really important. You know, when you farm or you garden now, if you're a market gardener, you put all your time and energy into preparation. You get your soil ready. You get your systems down. You make sure your employees are there. And you choose the right seeds. Why? So you can get the best out of it that year. You got to get the best. That's how you're going to make it, right? Well, then you go back to the next year and start over with someone else's seeds. Right? That's what we do now. Instead of looking through and selecting and picking out and saving seeds from the things that did best that year for us, then we take that momentum into the next year and we start at a different level. Okay, that's the basic system that produced agriculture in the first place and all of this diversity that we've exploited. And so that's the crime. We forgot that part. So little by little, it doesn't have to be a strain, but realize as farmers, wow, wouldn't it be great to have a product that wasn't perishable or as perishable as my lettuce, right? Carrots will last maybe through the winter. Potatoes, Idaho, where I came from. You know, Idaho became famous for potato production, not because it produced better potatoes. It's because they had alkaline soil root cellars that stored them better, right? So they could get them through the winter and still be selling them the next spring, right? So, but that's still perishable. But when you've got seeds, if you can learn to somehow pay attention on some small level in your farm for one crop even, and start to learn to harvest some of the seeds off of that, you've got a new product. And it might last decades if it's stored correctly. What is the news last week? Seeds that were 30,000 years old from the tundra in Siberia just germinated. So we don't even know how long they'll last, but way less perishable than most of the crops that you're selling. It's very small. It's easy to mail. You know, as a product, it's just, as an agricultural product, it can't be beat. When you add in the fact that inside of it is so much embedded energy and potential. And so where that elegance comes home to roost then, where it has always made the most sense and always gained most of its value, is in its region, where it's adapted, right? No, what did he say this morning? You can't outsource a local food system. You can't outsource your local seed system either. And that needs to be a part of what we're doing. So as bad as it looks, look at what we have left. We've got enough diversity in the seed stocks that we have, and we have enough information, and we can use this now as part of this economic revival. And so one of the things we do at Native Seed Search is we teach seed school. And the idea is to come in for 6 days. If you want to learn this, if you want to get from 0 to 60 in 6 days, that's what we try to do. We try to be sensitive to your individual needs and get you down the path for where you want to go with this. But we've graduated over 100 students now. They've come from all over the continent. So we're actually learning how to do this, how to teach this. This will be our 7th seed school. We'll start this Sunday here in Tucson. Got 6 new small bioregional seed companies have come out of these classes. Dozens of seed libraries and seed exchanges. As people are reawakening and realizing that if we really want to be sustainable in our agriculture, this has to be a component.
For my part, I've come here today to speak on behalf of the fruits and nuts of the world, which I'm happy to be part of. I thought Bill would do such a good job with the annual seed crops that I would try to add the complement of the perennial fruit and nut crops, the cane fruits, the berries, the rhubarbs and asparaguses, the agaves and prickly pears, the perennial mints and goji berries of the world. And what I mean is that I think with climate change, we have new reasons to invest in our perennial fruit and nut crops and integrate them into our farming systems rather than simply thinking of a farm as annual crops. They're complements to, not in competition with one another. The annuals and perennials in any ecosystem that we see in Arizona are living together. Why aren't we having them live together on our farm? Cohabitating, if you want. So my point is that with beginning farmers, we often focus on the annual crops because we're leasing land or having small plots of land that we might think, well, we may have that for a few years and we're going to look for something more permanent. And so there's a strong emphasis with beginning farmers on the annual crops. What I think we need to imagine is that there's going to be a lot of land coming available in cities for urban farms and market gardens that will still have to emphasize those annual crops and should. I think Forbes magazine said that within, by 2015, they expect that 80% of the vegetables being eaten in the United States will come from urban farming. But a lot of that will be taking advantage of county lands here in Pima County that were saved from development as part of the Sonoran Desert Protection Plan. The county's leasing ranches. It's open to leasing farmland. We have remarkable new developments like Las Milpitas that again is an example of what can be done on land within our own metro area. But there's also the need to think out further about perennialization of our farmlands and the permaculture designs that many of you are already committed to, which means stacking food production so that we have multiple layers of food production happening in the same space. And the perennial trees and shrubs that can provide shade to understory vegetables, herbs, and root crops, I think, are going to become increasingly important. Why, after being an annual seed head for most of my life, have I suddenly flipped and why am I emphasizing perennials? Well, as I have the blessing of being longer lived, maybe my attention has shifted to longer lived plants, I don't know. But the point is that for adapting to climate change, we know that we need roots in the ground and we need them year round. And our motto should be, as someone said yesterday in our meeting in Elgin, I think it was Duncan, no soil uncovered. So one of those things is that we have less tillage and more carbon sequestration when we have this understory of tree crops, whether there's fruits or nuts or berry crops, as part of our farming systems here in Arizona. Some people who've done open field agriculture may say, well, if you start doing those tree crops, aren't you precluding the opportunity to grow annual crops because of the amount of shade that we're producing? With crops that I've studied closely, like chilies, they only require about 40% of the solar gain that they're getting in a summer day in a place like Tucson. So if they have 60% shade of trees nearby moving over them or whatever, they're still getting enough solar gain to do all their photosynthetic play during the day. We're also finding less stress on the plants because of that shade, and elderly farmers who once grew their chilies in the open are telling me I'm much better off putting them beneath hedgerows or fence rows of cottonwoods or willows or other plants, so they are getting shade in a cooler environment. I'm having less virus problems and less heat stress on my plants by having them in partial shade during the day. Obviously, the name of the game with CSAs is to get as much diversity in the hands of your partners in crime, your CSA members, over the whole season, and many of the CSA farms have just done a remarkable job of going from 15 vegetable crops to over 100 that sequentially play out over the year. The fruit crops and some of the perennial root crops can also enhance that diversity and extend your season. So you can do value-added fruit products and have them as part of your CSA mix during the winter, or keep the root crops in cold storage and sequence them out over your batches of CSA deliveries over the whole winter. Two other things: the structural diversity in the ecosystem, that if we're truly heeding Bill Mollison's vision for permaculture, we're trying to mimic natural ecosystems. Here in the desert, we have virtually every plant starting under nurse plants, from wildflowers to saguaros and barrel cacti. They're starting under mesquites and palo verdes. And so by using that nurse plant ecology model for the model of our farm systems, we're also saying that we don't just want a diversity of species, whatever it is, the 400 varieties of crops that Native Seed Search has, but we want structural diversity too, compositional diversity and structural diversity, multiple layers in our farm ecosystem. Finally, when we talk about something like Michael Pollan's food rules, I always get ticked off at the fact that one of them was right before him and he forgot to put it in the book, and that's that the best way to eat if you want to stay healthy is to diversify the stuff in your diet. That different fruit varieties have different levels of nutrients, different secondary chemicals, even among peaches or pears or whatever. Incredible diversity of nutrients with across varieties of a single species like pears or apples or peaches or cucumbers. And so by simply providing our customers, consumers, our co-conspirators with a diversity of fruits, just like a diversity of seeds, we're getting people off the fructose addictions. We're giving them a variety of nutrients that take the place in terms of the novelty of what they think they might be getting from the stuff in the grocery store that has fructose in virtually every package. And we're diversifying what can be made available seasonally, and so many of our restaurants really do want a mix across the seasons. The handout that I passed out that will be on the Food Alliance website and in my own website is of low chill requiring fruits and nuts adapted to the snoring desert. okay? So the issue here is that we can't think of the portfolio of fruit and nut varieties that are being grown here now or that are recommended in old ag extension bulletins as what will be able to grow the next 50 years. And let me talk about that for a second. Within the last, well, since old farts like Dennis Maroney and I were born, here in Arizona, we've lost about 250 chill hours over the last 60 years. Most conventional crops that we get from fruit and nut crops that we get from nursery catalogs of temperate fruits, the mainstream catalogs, are for varieties that require 750 to 1,000 chill hours, the number of hours between 32 and 45 degrees Fahrenheit that they receive over the winter that cools them down but triggers physiological processes that allow for budding and flowering and fruiting in the spring and summer. So we've lost about a fourth of what those varieties require just since 1950. We're expected to lose between 250 and 500 more over this next century. That means that in low desert areas, we're going to have to be growing varieties that need only 400 to 250 chill hours, which are the figs and pomegranates of the world and some of the other things that you see on the list. And that in Phoenix, even things with 400 chill hour requirements may be marginal. Those of us who live in southeastern Arizona are still okay. We're up above 750, 800 chill hours right now, but we'll be coming down to 500 or 600. So the things on that list, and again, I only printed out a few because I didn't want to cut down more saguaros to make a lot of paper. The things on that list are for the low chill requiring things. There's still a tremendous amount of diversity there. Desert Survivors is specializing in this stuff now, the kinds of quinces and figs and pomegranates that Jesus Garcia and Kanan Routson and other people are finding still out on the landscape that have been in place for hundreds of years that have adapted to the climate here. A lot of them are from Mediterranean origin and have never needed that many chill hours to begin with. So look at the fruits and nuts with honor and respect that you look at the wonderful seeds that Bill talked about. Respect your elders and eat them. Okay? Thank you very much. Let's take some questions if there's time.
Thanks, Gary. Questions, everybody? We got about 15 more minutes, and so here you go.
I have a question for Bill.
Yeah.
In looking at the NRCS's documents of what are native plants and native species we can plant here, I've noticed some that I would not consider native plants, like, for example, Camelina sativa, that everyone always asks me, can you smoke that? My answer is, you can smoke anything you want. But I've been looking at the Camelina sativa crop in Montana, and it's as a feed and as a grass source, and it looks very interesting. And the NRCS lists it as a native species, but where our ranch is, we're in the Arabica, and I don't want to be responsible, be it possibly good for my agricultural resources. I don't want to introduce something like that into an area where it's never been before. And just your comments on that.
Be careful. And all of those overlays, whether they're noxious weed lists, even within a state, those are drawn up for the whole state. Each state has a list of restricted plants, say. And look at how varied this state is, from Flagstaff, to Nogales. And hugely different plant ranges. And nobody's ever really gone in with the kind of local intelligence, except maybe local native plant chapters. Yeah. And there's little bodies of people that sort of understand these things. So when you need more answers, ask around in those circles first. But realize that these large overlays probably don't have the answers. It's like everything, nobody's coming to help us now, right? We're going to have to figure this stuff out. I mean, that's the bad news. The good news is we're the pioneers, and we get to make these decisions, and we get to be responsible. And with plants, I'm convinced after years of teaching that third graders can learn whether or not it's noxious and how to take care of things. And so I think we need to realize it's our environment. I used to call it the Church of the Native. People would call me up and say, well, I've just joined the Church of the Native, so to speak, and now everything's going to be okay because I'm just going to use native plants. And that's where we should start our discussion. Learn the names of all the plants, but realize we don't know how they interact. We don't know the successional structures. We really don't have the multi-generational white-haired masters in this region that it would take to start to understand our plant life. So in lieu of that, we get to start making it up again. Just be careful. Let's talk to the people around us and let's proceed because we've got to take care of ourselves now. Yeah.
I just want to ask Mr. Langton, what's the common name for that?
I believe it's faux flax, or it's also known as faux flax, or is it
Dalmatian toadflax?
no? It's originally from the Nile Delta, and what's very nice about it is it grows very well in arid areas, and it grows great if you irrigate it, and it's very high in omega-3.
And you just said it, though. It's from the Nile Delta, and it's a native. See, that's the problem.
Yeah.
From the place that brought you tamarisk, Bermuda grass.
Be careful. You know, and we have a structural problem in that our agencies, you know, the BLM and the Forest Service, which have hired botanists to help us with these things on our public lands, have a rotational structure that never allows them to stay in one place long enough to learn really what's going on. And so, again, take what information you can, but let's stand up and be responsible ourselves now.
Yeah, we, as a market farm, struggle sometimes working with native seed search, just in the quantities of seed that are available. To where some varieties are, I would say the majority are only available in a packet size. So the economics of buying, you know, if we buy
Right.
pound and buy 5 pounds, is there any effort to make larger quantities of seed more available, or partnering with farms, area farms that do grow out to certain varieties to make larger quantities of seed available?
Huge effort, and then talk to the gentleman sitting right in front of you, who Steve Peters is our new farm manager. He just moved here yesterday. We should all welcome him. We are so lucky. Steve, for 15 years, was head of production, seed production for Seeds of Change. And so that expertise has now come to us, and that is one of our goals, is to amp up production in the important things. And that's where we need your feedback, though, about specific varieties for this year and next year and how to proceed. Because, as I said, this is a partnership now. We have resources. You have needs. Let's figure out how to do this.
So please, see me if you're interested in growing seed too. And yes, we are very much, that's the direction we're moving in as well, is getting larger amounts of seed out to more people. So it's gardeners and farmers.
Yeah, one of Steve's, one of the strengths he brings is the ability to find and develop a network of growers, seed growers for us. And so, again, there'll be economic opportunity in that. We were talking about that yesterday. So it's really an exciting time. Yeah.
Is there a prayer of saving our GMO or our native plants nationally from GMO contamination?
The question was about native plant interactions with GMO contamination. Currently, there's about 25 crop species that have GMOs, have had transgenic manipulations. And we know from studies in Norm Elstrom in Riverside that we do have gene flow into things like wild radishes in California. So it's of concern to a lot of people. It's actually as much concern for fish, salmon. There's transgenic salmon and all of that now too. So don't just think crops in the normal sense. Cottonwoods and salmon are part of this too. I want to say something basic though. is that if we don't have farmers doing these, the native crops, whether it's genetic engineering or other kinds of hybridization, F1 hybrids, the risk of that screwing up our food system is relatively low because we've already decided to be victims of our food system. And so the best thing that we can do to keep out GMOs is to make sure that our market is diverse to begin with, that we don't buy into having any single variety, whether it's GMO or not, dominating the marketplace. It's getting too costly to produce GMOs. They're not producing the yields that were anticipated. And if we show that our values are for a diversity of foods rather than a single bullet solution to feeding a hungry world, I think that will build up the antibodies in our food system to repel GMOs.
You addressed urban agriculture. Well, part of your vision, as you described it, was urban agriculture for the things you're talking about right now. So something that would address urban agriculture in Tucson specifically is about a year ago, the local water company started a tiered pricing system where water usage above a certain rate, I can't remember the exact numbers, but I believe it triples. So, and it kicks in around $100. And my experience has been, because my growing project started in downtown Tucson, is that above $100, it becomes cost prohibitive to grow on any scale that's larger than just a home garden. So as far as urban agriculture in Tucson, is this something that any thought has been given to? Or, I mean, it's a great idea, it's to conserve water. But as far as urban agriculture goes, it seems to be prohibitive, at least as far as growing in Tucson.
Great topic. I know that already in the few discussions I've been able to sit in the Pima County Food Alliance, because I'm way down in Santa Cruz County now, so can't come in every night, is that the water issues and the policy issues are part of it, and maybe Jaime can say something about that in a second. But one thing is that there are exemptions in the Tucson Active Water Management Area for water use, urban or otherwise, if there's an experimental or a public benefit part of your operation. So investigate that, and let me turn this over to Jaime.
Just real quick, so that you know, in terms of urban gardening in Tucson, urban farming, is there has been discussions that have been opened up through the Food Systems Alliance with wastewater management. So use of water for gardening is also tied to that, to wastewater management also. So we're in the very beginning stages of that conversation. It's also going to probably, hopefully, lead into a conversation with, might be speaking too soon, but you know me, Section 8 housing, and they're not able to garden because of they don't want to increase water rates for subsidized housing, the people that need to grow the food the most for themselves. So hopefully, with your guys' help and some more awareness, we can increase that discussion as needed.
One other thing there is that we're doing a water harvesting grant for our farm down in Patagonia to get entirely off fossil groundwater and fossil fuel. And I think we need a lot more work on mid-scale water harvesting systems that can work for productive farms, not just as a supplemental source of water, but as a main source of water, and crank up our storage capacity and the scale of watersheds that we're looking on, and look at some of the Pima County lands as potential places where we can contract to do that kind of thing. So I think we need to pursue a number of options there. Yeah.
Gary, did I hear you say that by the year 2015 that 80% of the vegetables will be grown in urban gardens?
That's a prediction from Forbes magazine. Now keep in mind, those guys sit in big skyscrapers making their predictions. But what we're seeing is a tremendous shift in where the investment is happening in getting food back into the city. People in LA are paying $100,000 to reclaim urban lots for food production to get all the chemicals out of the soil. People are willing to do that and have food close by because of our soaring gas costs of transporting food 800 miles or more. There's a window of opportunity here. So we need to get creative on how we're asking city fathers and county mothers, or however you say it, to use the land that they bought up years ago to stop development or to maintain aquifer access and all of that. So I think there's a lot of effort that can be done to say, let's have farmer incubator programs developing both on city and county lands. Yeah. I should say also, because I forgot, there was something in what Regina read about, I was going to say something about pollinators. I will. We're having 2 pollinator attracting workshops. People can come too, not just pollinators, to these workshops. But one's going to be March 20th down in Patagonia doing pollinator hedgerows, and another one will be up on Tumamoc Hill, co-sponsored with Natural Resource Conservation Service, and we'll post the details on various websites.
I just wanted to add, as far as the urban agriculture, it may be that that could help us with seed production, that the isolation offered because of the breakup of buildings and trees and other things actually make it easier to isolate crops for seed. And Basil, the Bay Area Seed Information Library in California, has been experimenting with this and drawing up new isolation distance charts based on their city. So it offers all sorts of new opportunities. I just wanted to add that.
I just wanted to add, there's a National Beekeeping Conference here in Tucson this weekend at the YMCA camp.
Beekeeping conference.
Yeah, National Beekeeping Conference here this weekend.
The bees are having a convention.
They only swarm like this once every 8 years. Is that the, no.
It's the Triangle Y, just so you know.
Thank you all.
Thank you.